Hey, you guys. Look at Tom with his boob. What did you call those?
They're boob magnification goggles.
Boob magnification goggles.
Yeah.
And he can also see you through YouTube, even though we recorded this like a long time ago.
I can see how big your boobs are.
Because so not only can he see you like through the TV or through your laptop, he's also like a Time Lord.
Yeah. Across time and space, I see you and your boobs. And if they were C cups, to me they're double E's. Is that Pookie? Shit, Pookie's fucking responded. Don't worry about it, Pookie. You're not a boob appreciator. So we saw this movie about this skull. Skull of Marquis de Sade.
The Skull.
The skull. It had what's his name?
Peter Cushing.
Peter Cushing. He was skinny as shit.
And Christopher Lee. He's always skinny as shit.
I came to the conclusion that Peter Cushing got better looking the older he got.
I think so too. He's definitely one of those dudes that Christopher Lee did as well.
Yeah.
It helps if you're kind of like gaunt and cadaverous and British and sort of classy.
Yeah, he got skinnier as he got older. And I don't know if he was losing wisdom teeth or what, because you're starting to get more sunken in. He's not that old in this one. I mean, he still looks cool. You can recognize him, but he doesn't look like, he doesn't look like 1977, General Tarkin or anything, but fucking, he eventually gets that skinny.
Yeah.
They said that he got even skinnier after his wife died.
Yeah, because he was real. Yeah, he was like real. He wasn't eating much and everything like that.
He said he was just waiting around to die. He didn't give a shit.
Yeah, which I said that's sad.
I respect that though.
But yeah,
he had achieved all he was going to achieve. He's just making movies, paycheck, and he's like, fuck it, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But we came across this movie. This was actually made in 1965, and this was only the second movie made by Amicus Productions. Old Hammer's rival. I guess they weren't really rivals because they used a lot of the same actors and stuff.
It's just like another one.
Yeah, I feel, Amicus, they kind of, obviously Hammer gets, known for making sort of more gothic stuff, vampires, werewolves, shit like that. Whereas Amicus was more known for their anthology movies, or portmanteau, if you were British, they called them, which were several stories, and they were usually set in the modern day. But they made a few movies that were just like one story as well, which The Skull is. I feel this is kind of like a little bit of a forgotten one.
Hammer movies actually looked better. They were more colorful. You could tell they were more expensive.
Yeah.
And they showcased boobs a lot more. She's laughing. It's true. The Amicus ones, they might have one girl who's boobalicious, and they'll fucking put her in an outfit that's like, we see what you're talking about. We know what you're trying to show us. But the Amicus will just show you one girl like that. All right? Hammer would have like 4 or 5 of them.
And they'd all be like hanging.
They'd all be hanging. Yeah, it was a boob fest. Let me bend over and get this thing. Any opportunity to do a down blouse, hell yeah. And they were all beautiful. This is 60s and 70s, you know what I mean? Show business was still glamorous. And England, or Europe in general, they kind of glorified feminine beauty. They just, the best looking women from England or Germany or Italy. The Italians did the same thing. The Italians were even more egregious. All right. They were just straight up nudes everywhere, But the British had a nice mixture, you know what I mean? Where, they were good looking girls, fucking great costumes, really good sets. And they show you some cleavage, but they didn't. Sometimes it was nudity, but it wasn't gratuitous, you know what I mean? Or let's say it wasn't at the Italian level. It was all gratuitous. The Italian level, that's just like, here it is, and here's some more of that. Like, we know you like that. We're going to show you some more of that.
You're jiggling around something.
Yeah. They jiggle. They knew exactly what they were doing. Well, a good example of a fucking awesome horror flick, or Hammer horror flick, would have been the Carmilla.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Lesbian vampires. You can't fucking beat that.
Well, they made, I feel like there was a lot of movies that came out that were lesbian vampires, because that one was like cha-ching. It was like lesbian vampires. That's all I need to hear. Just
lots of push-up bras, lots of bustiers.
Lots of women making out with one another.
And cucking out the men and shit. And the men are like, wait a minute, hold on, what happened? The girls are getting it on. Wait a minute, what?
Can I watch?
And then Dad sees it happen. He's like, that's not happening, is it? Are they a couple? That's not acceptable. I mean, he's thinking that, but they didn't say it. Remember that when Carmilla comes down with the girl and her dad is like, "Fuck is this all about?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said, and
what's she doing with that?
Will they let me watch it?
Yeah.
But yeah, so Amicus, I guess I don't know if they'd made like some films beforehand that weren't horror movies, but their first horror movie I think was Dr. Terror's House of Horrors, which I'm pretty sure that was an anthology. But then this was their second one. Now the thing about the skull is that it has a lot of the same aspects that their portmanteau films had, in that it's the same director, Freddie Francis, a lot of the same actors, like I said, Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee was in this one as well. He's billed as like special guest, but he's in it a lot, so it's not like a cameo or anything. And the story was written by, or it was based on a story by Robert Bloch, who wrote Psycho, if you didn't know. And he wrote so many fucking short stories that pretty much all of the Amicus movies, like the anthology movies, all the stories were written by him, mostly. And he also wrote like for fucking Twilight Zone and Thriller and like pretty much any horror anthology show that you could think of. So the story that this was based on was had the really like workmanlike title of The Skull of the Marquis de Sade. And the story was only 6 pages long. So Robert Bloch didn't write the screenplay for this, though. Milton Suboski, who was one of the owners of Amicus, he was like the studio head. He actually wrote the screenplay, and that's kind of the only... I really did like this movie, but I think that's my only criticism, was that you can definitely tell that this was a really, really short story that they were kind of like... trying to make a long movie.
I gotta be honest, to me, I thought it was mediocre. It was not bad. If you're into this kind of movie, you'll like it, I guess. But by modern standards, I'd call this mediocre. Had Hammer done it with a bigger budget, it would have been better, I think. It just didn't quite have the eye candy that it should have had. Amicus, so far from what I'm seeing, Amicus is a good company. It wasn't quite up to Hammer's quality level.
Yeah, this one, it kind of had... They almost did like an homage to Hammer at the beginning, because they show the original dude that goes and steals the Marquis de Sade's skull, like he does some grave robber action. And that supposedly happens in 1810 or whenever the fuck that happens. And he takes it back and tries to boil the flesh off it. And that's when you get kind of the only half-naked woman, because she's like in the tub when she gets there. Although you don't see her boobs or anything. You just kind of see her from the back and she's like, oh, naughty. But yeah, so it's that kind of thing. And then something bad happens to him that you presume the skull had something to do with. And then they jump ahead to present day, which would be 1965. And then you have Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee, who are kind of like, they're friends, colleagues, kind of like they know each other, and they're both collectors of occult paraphernalia.
Yeah.
And so they're at an auction, and Christopher Lee ends up like buying these weird little statues or whatever. And then so what ends up happening though is that Peter Cushing, he has this dude that brings him stuff who's kind of shifty, and his name is Marco. And he brings him this book, which is about the Marquis de Sade, and it's supposedly bound in human skin. Even though it just looks like it looks like a regular ass book, but whatever. And then they kind of give you a backstory of Marquis de Sade. In this movie, you're led to believe, or you're led to what's the word that I'm looking for? They're positing that Marquis de Sade was essentially like a wizard or like a warlock. Like that he was a Satanist, and that he had occult powers, and that I don't think that they were saying that it was him, but I think they mentioned in there that he was kind of possessed by a demon, and the demon was still hanging around in his skull and could make you do shit, like it can control your mind essentially,
kind of possess you.
Yeah,
it's kind of I guess it's an okay idea. I just think that, look, it's 1964. That's when they're making this movie. It's a little conservative even for 64. There's some other stuff from this same era that Hammer came out with that is a lot, I think more interesting and kind of have a sexier element and a little bit more visual. It lacks a lot of visual impact. It didn't really have that giallo kind of backlight coloring that
had really, a little bit of that, but not much.
And that didn't quite have enough women in it. There was a lot of men in the movie. It needed more female characters.
Yeah, it was a sausage fest.
Yeah, it needed more female characters, even if they were just eye candy. And Hammer did that. It was just to keep the male audience more interested in what was going on. And most of the male audience at the time, it would have been young men.
Yeah.
So women didn't watch these kind of movies, really, I don't think. I mean, they had some, but I think the main market was young men. It ended up coming off feeling like one of those Vincent Price, Edgar Allan Poe movies. Not quite as zany. It was a little more serious. But it was like mediocre. It was in the middle of everything. They could have intensified some aspect of it. Either intensify the horror or intensify the sexuality or intensify the visuality of it. The visuals with the colors. It was just kind of conservative. It's a good way of describing it. It felt conservative to me, and therefore kind of like it's a movie that kind of falls into the background. If you're into these kind of old British horror movies, this would be one that you would want to watch after having seen a bunch of other ones that were good. You start running out of them.
Yeah, this is kind of like second or third tier.
Yeah.
Like, even for Amicus, because I feel like Amicus, honestly, I feel like this movie, and I think I kind of implied this before, but I think it would have worked better as a short segment in an anthology movie. Because, like I said, you can definitely tell that this was a short story. You can tell it was the same writer. It was Robert Bloch. But you can definitely tell because there's a lot of stuff in it that didn't really need to be in there. Just because they were trying to make it to feature length.
Yeah, and a lot of stuff, like you said, a lot of stuff that didn't need to be there because it was kind of forgettable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There was only one scene in it that to me was memorable, and that was the one where fucking dude's sitting there and the skull comes out of the Peter Cushing.
I dug that, yeah.
And the skull comes out of the cover. It's a dresser or something, or it comes off the shelf. And it sits down on that, it's a little table.
Yeah.
On the table.
Skull moves around by itself.
Skull moves by itself.
Yeah.
And that's really the only thing that was visually memorable.
Now, I will say the cinematography for this was actually pretty cool. I liked the inside of Peter Cushing's apartment, like his house. Like, I loved that hallway, like with the purple and the black, and like that was super cool.
Yeah, the settings were good,
and his study was really cool. Yeah. And even like Marco, the trader, like his apartment building is actually really cool with all the stained glass and everything, like him falling through the stained glass.
When he would walk around, the paintings would turn towards him, and there was poltergeist activity. That was pretty.
Yeah, I liked that bit too.
That's pretty effective.
Like, yeah, and I like that wasn't really brought up. Like, because what ends up happening is that him and Christopher Lee had the skull, but it was stolen from him. And so Peter Cushing kind of wanted to get his hands on it after he had the book, and now he's all interested. And Christopher Lee was like, man, you don't want that shit. It can control your mind and it'll like make you kill people and whatnot. And, he's like, and I was able to resist it, but it was really hard. But of course, Peter Cushing still wants that shit anyway. And indeed, it does kind of start to like control his mind. And I think that part of the movie, like, especially near the end where the skull starts kind of floating around on its own, was like really cool. That was like really well done. And it was like really creepy. And then when he was like walking through the apartment, and like I said, sometimes like the paintings in the background would like tilt.
Yeah.
And like the mirrors would kind of go weird and stuff.
Yeah,
I will say too, that right when the skull first started to like, do its kind of like effect on him or whatever, there was this really great surreal scene where he gets like two guys show up at his door and say that they're cops, and they're like, hey, you're under arrest for murder or whatever. And he doesn't know what the fuck they're talking about because he was just sitting there reading, minding his own beeswax. And like, so he goes to this place and it goes like all fucking Franz Kafka. Like, he goes into this room and it's all blue and there's nothing in there except, the judge's bench and the judge sitting on it. And then they hold a gun to the back of his head and make him play Russian roulette. And then it keeps clicking, and then like he runs into another room and it's all red. So it's like this really weird surrealist kind of shit in there, which I actually kind of liked that they put that in there.
Yeah.
Too, even though it was just kind of trying to show that his mind was fracturing because of the skull's influence, you know.
Yeah, those interior shots would have looked a lot better had the Italians shot them, though.
True. Although, like I said, there were a couple of touches where
they tried
like it'd be like a really saturated like green light or something like that.
Well, the British knew about it. I mean, they were doing it. They did it in that movie Psychomania.
Yeah.
Remember that they kind of had that giallo color effects, and Hammer did it too.
Yeah.
It just they were good interior shots. It's just they didn't really like pop.
Yeah.
They should have. It's almost kind of like it was a workman. It was just a workman like job. Hey, let's get this thing shot and get it over with. It probably didn't take them long to make this, and the budget is going to be low. So
yeah, I don't think they had as much money to work with as Hammer did.
It's not like you. So maybe I'm a little harsh on it, but the thing is that once you make these movies, they're around for a long time. You might as well just throw the extra money in there, man. Fucking learn how to fucking throw some colored lights on some stuff, spice it up, make it a little more visual. And I think maybe the movie would have been, like you said, the edit is a little funny too, because they've stretched it out.
Yeah, it seems like it would have worked better as like a short inside like a larger, because for some reason, it's really weird that Robert Bloch wrote this story like about a skull, Marquis de Sade skull, that for some reason can control your mind and make you kill people because he's a wizard or a warlock or whatever. I'm pretty sure, if I'm not remembering this right, but I think Robert Bloch also wrote a short story that I read a long time ago about Jack the Ripper's knife. And if you found Jack the Ripper's knife, that would also make you kill people.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm pretty sure. So that was maybe one of Robert Bloch's things where it's just like an object that was owned by like an evil person. Like, if you pick it up, it's going to make you do the same shit as that person.
Had Hammer done this, there'd have been a lot more women in it. And then the hottest woman there would have been possessed by Marquis de Sade. And then she would have done some like lesbian bondage. You know what I mean?
This was like very
some shit.
It was very unsexual for being about the Marquis de Sade.
You got the Marquis de Sade, and there's no fucking bondage. There's no lesbian bondage.
They kind of didn't talk about, because they do, like I said, when Peter Cushing first gets the book about Marquis de Sade, and he doesn't really know that much about him. Yeah. So they do kind of this thing where he's like talking about his history, but the whole thing about it is that they just said that something about cruelty and everything like that, like he was an evil, like he was into black magic or whatever, but they don't say anything about the sadomasochism or like him being a pervert or anything like that. And just think of how that would have played differently. And now when you said that there's like no women, the only women that are in this movie are the chick in the bathtub at the beginning, like in the 1810 portion of the movie.
She was cute.
And and she's like naked, but you don't get to see anything. And Peter Cushing's wife, who's only in like 2 scenes.
Yep.
And she's only in there. She's like not even a character hardly. She's only in there like to be menaced at the end. Or, so like Peter Cushing is like, oh my God, I'm going to kill my wife because the skull told me to. Yeah. And that's so you get that scene at the end, which is a good scene. But I think it would have been more effective if they had built her character up more.
Had you never read any Marquis de Sade's books or known who that guy was, you wouldn't know what the Marquis de Sade was on the basis of this movie. You wouldn't know what you would say. Well, who's that? Is he like Anton LaVey? Because he might as well be.
I kind of feel like they were trying to make him more like Anton LaVey because this was mostly just like black magic.
Right. Yeah.
There wasn't any sex. There wasn't any sexual element to it.
No. So in a way that they might have been kind of like. Trolling or fishing in a way. They're trying to get people to come in on the back of fucking, on the back of fucking this Sade's notoriety with the promises of maybe seeing some BDSM.
Yeah, that maybe somebody's going to get whipped.
We're going to see some BDSM.
We're going to get tied
Might
up.
At least see some suspension or some shit like that. You know what I mean? And no, none of that happens. But it should have. Had Hammer done this, it would have.
Well, yeah, they would have gotten away with everything they could have gotten away with in 1965.
The ghost of de Sade would have gone into the hottest chick there and fucking taken over and abused the other women.
And then she'd have been doing all kind of like wanton shit.
Yeah. She'd have been doing shit to herself in front of the mirror. Because that's what de Sade would have done if he'd got inside a woman. He'd have done all kinds of weird shit. He was trisexual. He just tried everything. And he'd have gone into men too, though.
Well, yeah, he, like you said, he wanted to try everything out.
Yeah, he's trying everything.
So essentially, this is almost kind of like I mentioned, that I'm pretty sure that story was written by Robert Bloch, and I think it was just called The Knife, and it was about Jack the Ripper's knife and how it made you find it, somebody finds it like in a gutter or something, and then they start stabbing people. And this was kind of like that. It's like the Marquis de Sade skull. All he wanted you to do, he was controlling your mind, and he would the skull would woo out of the fucking, out of the cabinet or whatever. And then it would light the black candles, and then it would make you go out and kill people and you didn't remember. And I don't know necessarily why the people that got killed, needed to be killed. Yeah. I think they were just random. Hey, why don't you just start killing people, just for the shits and giggles? Maybe. I don't know.
I think this is the second or third Amicus movie I've seen. And this is the weakest one out of the three that I've seen.
I mean, I can see why, it's, like I said, and I don't mean to be too harsh on it, because it's still, a good movie. It's a good-looking movie. Peter Cushing is always amazing. Christopher Lee is always amazing. It's a cool idea. I like some of the scenes, and I like the shit with the skull and everything. I just, like you said, I feel like they could have done more with that concept.
Yeah, it felt dated to me. This felt like an old classic horror movie, like old Dracula or old Frankenstein, what's the Universal monsters.
Yeah.
It's almost like some from old Universal.
That's I see what you're saying.
You know what I'm talking about? It didn't feel like 1964. 1964 could be a lot wilder than this. And they played it safe. It was conservative.
Yeah.
Or just real low budget. So they just had to do with what they could afford to do.
Yeah, I mean, this was only their second horror movie, so.
Well, Amicus is second.
For Amicus, okay. Yeah. I mean, they had made, like I said, they'd made Dr. Terror's House of Horrors, which I think I've seen, but I don't really remember much about it. Yeah. But I think this was their second one. And, you could really tell they were trying to do, something cool with it, with this kind of lurid premise, but it doesn't really live up to the luridness of that premise.
As far as these British flicks go, from what I've seen so far, and I haven't seen them all, Jenny's really an expert on it. When it comes to the 1960s, you want to see Hammer. When it comes to the 1970s, you want to see those Sinbad movies and Land That Time Forgot and People That Time Forgot. What company did those? Do you remember?
I don't really. You don't remember actually?
Yeah, they were almost like Star Wars before Star Wars. Some of the same studios and people that worked on those worked on Star Wars a few years later. But so far I'd say Hammer. Hammer was where it's at.
And like I said, they were more expensive. But honestly, I like a lot of Amicus's, anthology movies.
I got to see more of it.
Then. I like a lot of their anthology movies. Right. And like I said, I like that they were kind of doing something a little bit different. They weren't stepping on Hammer's dick. It's we're going to do gothic horror too, but we don't have as much money. They just wanted to do more modern pieces and more... and doing short stories, mostly what they did. And like I said, I feel like this movie would have been a lot better if this story had just been one part of an anthology, like they would usually do.
Had they just changed it from Marquis de Sade to somebody else, the story would have made it a little bit more sense to me, maybe.
Yeah, you could have just said it was some black magician from back in the day.
Then it was fucking Tokamata. Dude from the Inquisition. Yeah. That would have been even better. It's Tokamata's skull. He had a demon in him.
Yeah.
He was out killing people.
I mean, it could have worked. It could have worked with anybody. Honestly, they should have just had somebody that was a black magician or, that was into black magic or was just a murderer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you're going to do Marquis de Sade, that brings people have a certain perception.
Yeah, you're going to see
of what you're going to see with that, and you don't really see it. So like I said, it's just very strangely non-sexual for being about the Marquis de Sade skull, controlling people's behavior.
It was a pervy. He was a pervert. He's pervy as hell. You were going to see some perverted shit if the side was there. Yeah,
and it's I realized they couldn't show a lot of that stuff in the movies in the 1960s, but they could have, like I said, they could have implied it.
64, you could get away with a lot of shit. I mean, fucking de Sade was a power top, power bottom, the power trader. He would just, do all kinds of weird shit to people, and then write about all kinds. I don't know how much of the stuff he actually did and what he just, a lot of
he probably just imagined.
Imagined a lot of that shit.
He was just it was fanfic.
You'd get thrown in prison doing that shit.
He did, but he did.
Because he was drugging people.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Which even back then was pretty illegal.
He was roofing the hookers. You can go to jail for that.
So like I said, that's something anyway. That was actually illegal back then.
Yeah, although they said that might have been blown out of proportion too. It was something kind of like Spanish fly that he gave.
Yeah.
or so he thought it was some kind of aphrodisiac. They complained about it. I don't know if it was hysteria or what, because they didn't have the technology for Viagra.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was probably just rolled up damn chili powder. They didn't know much back then, you know what I mean? They probably gave him a stomach ache, and they went and fucking, he gave us poison.
Yeah, he poisoned me. That
yeah, it's probably chili powder.
Well, you know, I don't want to be drinking that either. It's like, hey, this will spice up our love life. Yeah. I'm like, oh man, now I have fucking, now I really don't feel like having sex because now I have
from the faraway land of Mexico. You know,
that's some exotic shit.
Probably nothing more than habanero.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like,
well, because like I said, it's very like magical thinking, which is you know, it's you know, does like. It's like if something is hot, then it's supposed to make you like all hot and like fucking aroused and everything.
Then they run to the police. He tried to poison us, and then they got fucking de Sade in there doing time in the Bastille for fucking giving some chicks habanero pepper. But that was the thinking of the time. They wrote great literature. They were smart, but they made a lot of mistakes.
But they pooped in bowls.
But they shat in fucking pots, and put the lid on it, put it to bed. They did
save that for later.
Their thinking wasn't modern.
You're gonna save that for later.
It wasn't very sound. They were superstitious.
Yeah, and like I said, if something, I mean, any food or anything like that you know was hot or was slimy or whatever, that's
poison.
If you ate it, that was supposed to have the same effect like on a human.
Yeah, but they would also think that would be like poisoning somebody.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, you roofied him.
Yeah.
With the habanero. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now she's trying to fuck everything. She can't control herself. She's out of control.
She's out there trying to hump some.
What did you do to my daughter?
Yeah. Wanton harlot. Yeah.
Yes, I can't take it.
I kind of feel like that's probably what happened. Like a lot of women that did stuff like that, they were just kind of like, that's why they said they were all like possessed by devils and stuff, because that was the only way they could get out of shit and like not get in trouble. And then they could just run around and be like a total hussy and then like be like, hey, I'm not responsible for that shit.
I didn't do it. He gave me some
shit, and it's like, stuff, and then I just started running around like humping everybody. Yeah. You know what I mean?
And then
it's not my fault.
the Sade was thinking to himself, damn, this shit worked.
I'm gonna write that shit down.
That shit worked.
I'll have to use that again.
Habanero works.
Makes chicks hump everything in sight.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this movie is we watched it on Amazon. If you have Amazon Prime, it's free on there. I think it's also on Shudder. It was added not too long. Because I feel like this is kind of like, not a forgotten necessarily, but it's kind of an Amicus movie that not a lot of people talk about. And you know, watching it, like I said, it's a good movie. I enjoyed it. I liked the shots like that were like skull cam, like through the eyes of the skull, like that they were watching. I thought that was kind of cool. So there's a lot of good shit in it, but it's not really one of their best ones.
My verdict is that it's a good movie on its own. It's not one of the first ones you want to see. If you want to see these old classic British horror flicks, go see all the Hammer stuff first.
And the Amicus one, if you're gonna watch the Amicus ones, I would recommend the anthologies first, and then kind of go back and see these.
This is
other
when
ones.
you see something like this after you've got a taste for the genre and you've seen all the other ones and you working your way down.
Yeah. It's kind of like when you're getting to like the bottom of
when
the
you become an expert.
Yeah, I hadn't seen it. This was the first time I actually saw it. All right, so that'll do it for this matinee. We'll see you guys later. Bye.